500 million Facebook users, including Australians, have had their information compromised after a major data leak over the weekend. It comes as the Morrison government considers a proposal which would see social media users provide 100 points of ID before they can actually log in or get an account. Joining me live is Peter Lewis, Director for the Centre for Responsible Technology at the Australia Institute. Look, it's an interesting idea that's gained traction with, more talk of what we know is out there, some of the anonymous abuse online. Do you think there's a way this could work? And how do you imagine it could work? We're talking about maybe entering a licence number, something else before you can actually open an account and that's linked to your name.
Hey, Tom. Yeah, what's clear is 100-point worth of personal information being handed over to Facebook isn't the answer. We do have sympathy for the notion that there should be greater responsibility on users of platforms and the platforms themselves to ensure that that what goes on a platform doesn't damage people. And the ID check proposal is in the context of a review into ways of keeping women and children safe. So it's in the context of domestic and family violence. We would prefer to see a legally enforceable obligation placed on the platforms, if you like, a social media AVO, where somebody who believes they're at risk of damage or bullying, harassment, can make get an enforceable order placed on those platforms to take down, to manage the interactions that occur on their platform. We think there should be responsibility, but we don't think the solution is to give Facebook or other platforms, for that matter, greater amounts of our personal information.
Well, I mean, the data wouldn't necessarily have to go to Facebook. The government could set something up, for example. So there's one aspect. The other one is, under that proposal, don't you run into the issue again of anonymity? If somebody wants to get back at their partner in that situation, they can keep creating more accounts. Nothing on their side is liable. They can't be tracked down. And the person being abused is playing an unwinnable game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah, look, it's a really complex issue that needs to be thought through. We've just got to make sure the cure isn't as bad as the problem. And what we've seen from this global data leak is that there are huge risks if the platforms become the custodians. So a licensing number is definitely something that should be looked at, but the default should always be to look at how the law works in the real world and then apply it into the digital world. So we think legally enforcing the social media platforms to take down sites and have an assumption that if a site is, or if a user is doing damage, they no longer have access to the network. At the moment, that's a really torturous process for people that are being the subject to these sorts of abuse.
Right, but so that sorts out one particular user doing it. But again, it doesn't seem to address the issue of anonymity. You spoke about this, addressing it like the real world. In the real world, it's much more difficult to anonymously abuse people so publicly. Are you offering any suggestion to that, or are you saying that's too difficult to tackle from your point of view?
We're saying that there should be obligations on the platforms to ensure that what is occurring on their platforms, where they are making money, does not do damage to users, but a registration platform through the platforms is not the answer. We're really interested in looking at other models. There are also valid concerns that giving government total control over somebody's digital life leads to its own layer of problems. So this is a real issue that we do need to think through in the context of a really fast-changing information ecosystem.
Right, but again, all of the things you've said today don't address, and perhaps you're saying it's too hard, and that's fair enough. I'm not saying what I'm putting across is an answer without problems, but none of this addresses people being able to create accounts, anonymous accounts that keep popping up and abusing people. I mean, is there some way to do that through? I don't know, IP address? I don't know, that can be gotten around, but it's at least a little bit more difficult, that you can't just keep creating accounts.
Yeah, the
IP addresses get blocked.
The proliferation of fake accounts is a real problem, and also the issue that there is an incentive in networks to have more accounts because it creates the appearance of a stronger and larger network. Right, so we totally accept that. I think where we get into a really important debate is that the proof of identity being housed either with a platform or with the government, both of those carry a whole bunch of consequences with it. So, you know, the idea is being put on the table through the parliamentary report. I don't think it should be knee-jerk rejected, although I think that the idea of the 100 points with Facebook should be taken off the table, particularly in the context of what we've been seeing over the weekend. The protection of young women on dating apps, on partners on social media, needs to be a joint responsibility between the government and the platforms, and at the moment nobody's taking responsibility. So, you know, technology can solve some of these problems, but platform responsibility is really important as well, Tom.
Yeah, look, it seems like the anonymity question is one perhaps that needs a bit more work. Peter Lewis, thanks for your time today.